Vamos a mirar aquí en fiesta magistral. Como dije antes, pues no podía ver el evento a la 1 de la mañana porque tengo vida bueno, no es porque tenga vida social, que también, sino que tenía que hacer algo y por eso he estado ocupado hasta aquí. Bueno, vamos a ver lo que queda del evento. Pero, si lo tengo ahí puesto de manera incompleta, o sea, si está incompleto esto, no he podido demostrarlo completo. Entonces me estoy haciendo un favor. Porque tengo vida social y eso quiere decir que me importa un carajo los dos eventos.
It's all the systems that set up. And we've normalized, okay, maybe your job will give you a half day, or maybe, you'll be able to get this luxury. It shouldn't be a luxury, it should be happens to.
Vale, he hecho una censura porque tenía que rascarme.
As an American. And then you add on as a person of color. If you're just trying to get the vote and you already.
Pero ¿qué más da? Esto no, o sea, no está puesto completo, o sea, ya lo sabéis. Pues esto del evento que no está puesto al completo, no he grabado todo el evento. Quiere decir que tengo vida social y que no he tenido por qué perder el sueño a lo tonto.
The history of black people in this country is, at one point, we were 3/5 people.
Subnormal. Das asco, pavo. Te voy a denunciar. Me estás siguiendo Esto es acoso, Esto ya es acoso, te puedo denunciar. Que lo sepas.
And these jokers are resilient. But that should give us hope. That should give us hope that, like, we can't stop, won't stop.
Pues a ver si tienes huevos de perder el evento por querer hacerme algo. Venga. A ver si hay huevos.
And I think that's our motto. We can't stop voting and we won't stop voting. We can't stop marching and we won't stop marching. We can't stop thriving and we won't stop thriving.
To that end, because you led me directly there, I've been asking everyone who has appeared on this platform, what does activism look like? And I feel like back in the day, we had an idea. Yes, it is marching. Yes, it is protesting. Yes, it is speaking out against things that we feel are not right or unjust. But talk to me about what activism looks like for Yvonne.
Activism, I think the beauty of activism is that it has many faces, right? You're going to have the people on the front lines. Like, you know what? Martin Luther King marched, but there were a lot of women who were in the homes like, hey, UT Doug, when they come back, this is how we support all the people who are marching on the front lines. And we're going to be here doing what we know to do best here. And you know what? Somebody needs to bail them out of jail so that we need to be in the community, y'all, getting money or whatever it is. So it's like everybody has a position to play. And so play your position on a shortstop, right? So whoever you are and whatever you do, play your position. So activism could look like, you know what? I'm not the one that's built to be on the front line. But you know what? My pockets go deep, so I'm gonna support the people on the front line. I'm a comedian. Black joy is a form of activism.
There's always a call for entertainers or celebrities to have the platform to do something. Why aren't you speaking out?
in terms of ways that we can actually be more uplifting to the community that we don't even, you may not even realize that you're serving.
Before I let you go, talk to me about the urgency, in your opinion, for people to vote, our people to get out and vote this time.
Yeah, I mean, guys, nine. If you think you're tired now, I'm telling you right now, you cannot take this sitting down. You can't take this joking. I understand that it may be hard to figure out who to vote for, but at the end of the day, we gotta vote for our families. We gotta vote for our legacies. We gotta vote for continued progress. We have to vote for upward mobility. We have to vote for equality in a way that is long lasting. And if we succeeded before, we can do it again. We talk about the whole. This is the time. This is not the time to give up. This is not the time to pretend in ways that we haven't made progress. We have. There's still much more to be done. And you know what? We might have to get to a point where we pass the baton to our children and our children's children, but we still have work to do now for that generation.
Wonderful, G. You are everything. You are Molly, but you are not Molly. But I love you so much as Molly on HBO's Insecure. You are an amazing podcaster, Jesus and Joel. Shout out to Lovey. And then we also have movies. Like you have the world. You're a model, cover model. Also, wait, don't let me forget your hugely successful stand-up comedy special on HBO. Girl, you're doing it all. And I am so grateful. You are truly the dream. Not just the American dream. You're the black girl, brown girl. You are all dream. The immigrant dream, everything. You are beautiful, beautiful. I really, really mean that. Yvonne Orgy, ladies and gentlemen, nothing but the best and excellence personified. Thank you so much.
I love you so much, so much.
Ahí viene el copyright.
So Atlanta has been one of the hotbeds in terms of political unrest and social injustice. We've seen so much happen in that city, and we've also seen so much come from that city, including one of our very own founding fathers of the civil rights movement, that's Martin Luther King Jr. But right now, we want to welcome in someone who has used his platform to talk about voting, to talk about racial injustice, and how he's trying to help. Atlanta's very own Russ joins us now. Russ, I'm not going to fan out and tell you what are some of my favorite songs or that I love to repeat on yours. We're going to get to the topic at hand. So we got to talk about, recently you did an interview where you shared your outlook on culture and music. And you also were very candid about the fact that you have a privilege and that it's necessary for you to give back. Tell everybody about what that means.
It's very obvious, I'm white and I'm in black culture and I'm benefiting financially off of it. So I feel like if you're a white person financially benefiting off of black culture, you have to put finances back into black culture. It's that simple. The screenshots with your feelings, it just comes off like fake empathy. Because it comes off very dismissive and very, oh, that sucks for y'all. But anyway, back to what I was doing.
Have you felt that way always, or is it now because of the time where we are in this country?
I've always had the feeling. I think now it's just obviously elevated. It's a new level and there's new, it's to the point now where you can't, first of all, you can't not say anything. Second of all, though, I just think saying something isn't enough anymore. I think, if you have the ability to put money back into a culture that you're financially benefiting from, have the ability to, you should.
It's interesting that you talk about it in that way because some people do believe that silence is the best way to go because it's hard to talk race, especially if you're white and you're in black culture. People just feel as if they can't talk about it. They feel awkward. They feel as if they don't have the privilege of the voice or the words. How do you find yourself right now in terms of interacting with people who want to talk to you about social injustice, police brutality? What's going on in this country right now?
Well, first of all, picking and choosing whether you want to be silent or not about race, that's a privilege in and of itself. But no, I try to just do my best to listen to the black people around me and the educated black people I have in my life. So I do my best to not act like I have all the answers for everything, especially in a culture that I'm not from. But that's why when we decided to raise the money for Black Lives Matter organizations, when we raised 500,000, we got on the phone with some of the women who started Black Lives Matter. I got on the phone with Tamika Nally. I was on the phone with Karen Civil and talking with my friends to make sure the money went to like the correct places, and people who really need it. It's just about listening. That's all. It's about listening.
Let's talk about that for a moment, because the way I think of activism, for me, it looks very differently. It's not necessarily just protesting on the front lines. I think that's great. But what about being an activist in the way in which you have decided to be one? What inspired you? What did it look like? You said you raised money for Black Lives Matter. What did you do? Walk us through everything that you did and how you find yourself in this moment.
So for me, it was 3 years ago. I had like a string of festivals, and I decided that I was going to wear T-shirts with a message on them because I figured, what better time to use a platform than in front of a bunch of people. So one of the T-shirts I wore was, if you want to change the system, speak up, white silence is pro-racism, the whole thing. And it didn't really it kind of got swept under the rug back then. But when all this stuff started happening again, and it's been happening, the police brutality against innocent Black people, I was like, man, I'm not the biggest artist in the world, and I certainly don't have the most white fans in the world, but I got a good amount of people that I can definitely mobilize and turn into some money, and I know they're down for the cause because it's merch, it's a good thing, and I've always been outspoken anyway, and so how am I going to be in Black culture and not be outspoken about racism?
And then I gotta ask you this, because you grew up in Atlanta, so that gives you a heads up depending for so many people, because you're in the crux of that beautiful Black city where there are so many wonderful Black leaders, almost so much great music, and things that speak to our culture right now. And we are really, really getting our word out, especially with this platform today, and saying that we must use our voice to vote. Talk to me about what the importance of voting for you in this upcoming election.
Yeah, so full transparency, I had never voted before, ever. And because, I was one of those people who was like, my vote doesn't matter, and I don't know, maybe it's because I was younger, maybe it's because I really thought that, or I don't know, but I just think that it's got to, now this is a bit of a privilege to say it's got to a breaking point for me, because obviously it's been past the breaking point for Black people, but I think that as a whole, the young people need to get out and vote, because we're the ones that never show up. You know what I mean? We never show up to vote, but we're the future. So it's like, look, we gotta go out there and vote, and then whatever happens, but at least we did our part. You gotta do your part.
You were very candid in saying that you just decided to vote, and I think there's a beautiful irony in the fact that you have your fans saying, because of you, I'm voting. Right. And there's something beautiful about that. But I want to know why now for you. Why in this moment is it important for you to vote? And what hit your spirit to say, yes, this is the time to do it?
Honestly, because I
George
think that
Floyd.
George Floyd really woke up a lot of people who, including myself, who I was vocal and outspoken about racism. I put it in my lyrics, I put it on T-shirts, I would talk about it in interviews, I was vocal about it. But that video, in that moment, I think me along with a lot of other people just kind of was like, all right, words are simply not enough anymore. We gotta do something, whether it's raising money, whether it's voting, or all the above. We gotta do something, and I'm ashamed that it took that for me to be like, I need to raise money and I need to vote. It's a shame, and I don't know, I guess it snapped a bunch of people out of it, And even if you were vocal and whatnot, it's time to actually put your money where your mouth is. It's time to go vote. It's time to just stop talking about it and be about it. And it's been time for that, but like I said, I'm ashamed that it took me this long to actually really, really be about it, but I'm here now.
So Russ, we all know that this is going to be your first time voting. Tell me what that experience is going to be like for you in terms of what you're excited about.
I think what it's going to do for me. It's going to let me know that I'm contributing to something bigger than myself, and I'm actually putting my money where my mouth is and I'm being about it because, for so long, and I know I'm not alone with this, but, standing on the outside and just screaming about this and that and this should change. And it's like, all right, but did you vote? you know? And so I know it's gonna feel good to know that I played a small role, And that's the problem. I think the mentality of like my vote doesn't matter needs to be changed to my vote, albeit small, does matter. It's a role I'm playing. If I play my part and you play your part and he and she plays their part, then we make a difference. But it'll feel. I have a feeling it's gonna feel very, very bigger than me. And I think when you realize that giving actually feels better than receiving, that's when you start wanting to do your part and contribute. So voting is an easy way to give.
Yeah. To whom much is given, much is required, and you've been given a huge platform. We are so grateful for you, Russ. Philanthropist, artist, community activist, first-time voter. We appreciate you doing this, okay?
Thank you. I appreciate y'all.
Copyright otra vez.
So cities like Atlanta and Chicago have been at the forefront of the discussions, especially now in this country when we're talking about COVID-19 and systemic racism as well as police brutality and what we can do in this country. Again, we're continuing our conversation, letting you know that your voice is your vote and your vote is your voice. We can change where we are in this country. Currently, I'd like to welcome you
Los
to
FPS en la señora
I appreciate you.
ha bajado más de lo normal. O sea, créanme, en la Play, si normalmente la Play, en la Play va a 60 FPS, pues la señora pues tendría esto a la mitad, o sea, unos 30 FPS. En el caso de Switch, pues la señora, el vídeo de la señora va a 15. Esa es mi teoría. Así que esto no es necesariamente culpa de Nintendo Switch.
A reasonable, respectable person who cares about everyone involved, which leads us to More Than a Vote. It is a beautiful collective.
More Than a Vote es más que un voto.
You are a part of that. Talk to me about why that's important for you right now and to be a part of that collective.
To me personally, it's important to be a part of that because I somewhat use baseball and my craft as an excuse to not get more involved in voting. But I can't any longer use baseball and voting as an excuse not to get educated and not also to show people like at any moment in time, any walk of life, we can make a difference.
So tell me in your words, what does activism look like for you?
In my words, it looks like LeBron James, the biggest athlete right now, speaking up and breaking the ice for everyone. And I think for the first time, people see and hear from us. So now we have white teammates, we have other people speaking up and realizing, okay, like this is how we go about doing this. And to me right now, social media, athletes speaking up, entertainment speaking up, like we're trying to do it more than a vote.
You said something I thought was so key because covering sports for so long, I know that it's tough for black players specifically in Major League Baseball to talk about how they feel. Adam Jones did it in a very eloquent way early on, but there are very few that are vocal. You said you all were afraid. Why use that word and why were you afraid?
We were afraid because in 2019 there was 68 of us total. And there are 38 teams. There's 25-man roster on each team. There's a 40-man roster, which is on each team as well. But there are many of us. So we're outnumbered in that sense, but not always in a negative way when it comes to our teammates and our clubhouse. But to get to this point, you have to move a certain way. You got to be careful what you say. You can't ruffle feathers. You can't come off in any way. Much like other black entertainers, much like yourself, probably having to live your life every day, but to get to the highest level, you gotta button up, you gotta be seen and not heard. So baseball is, like I said, it's time for us to try and speak up and make a difference and show it's okay to do so because we can't be quiet anymore.
That is a button up, be quiet, be seen but not heard. That is an expression that a lot of Black folks can relate to in whatever aspect of professionalism that they experience, especially if they don't work for themselves. They just feel that. That is also a socialization that we have as Black folks, especially, like you said, if you want to get to the higher level. And for so long, I felt it bubbling right underneath the surface that so many of us who were in whatever positions we were, who had platforms, were tired of pretending and looking the other way and spending so much time making others comfortable while we were uncomfortable. Do you feel that this is the type of movement that is sustainable, or is it just for a time?
Well, it takes everyone joining in on the conversation, and right now I feel like more than ever there are as little things as possible to distract from the bigger issue. We saw on draft day, we saw our president, Bill Epstein, holding up a sign saying Black Lives Matter and wanting to include be in it. But now we're having those conversations as well. So I definitely think this is sustainable, and it's not always just going to be the popular thing to do. Like, this is something that people want to get right because they know we can.
Jason, you said you think it's sustainable, that what you're seeing, especially with your colleagues in baseball, that this can be something where you're feeling more comfortable, feeling more safe to share how you feel about social injustice and police brutality. What are you doing right now in this moment with your platform to help change how we look at voting and how to educate the culture and the community about voting?
Well, first what I'm doing, Carrie, is joining up with More Than a Vote and joining up with other athletes and entertainers to get that message out and use our platform in that sense as a group. And try to create a brand with this to make it something that's not just about the election coming, make sure that it's about people getting educated for years to come and figure out where to vote and how to vote. We've got people in different areas that cover different demographics and influence different areas of people. And as a baseball player, as a Black baseball player, I feel like now, like we talked about, it's finally the time to show people that you can use your voice in this profession. You don't have to be afraid. And to me, that can help someone, help a kid growing up. He can see me, he can see other guys that we were in the video we posted saying, hey, this is what they're standing for. They're speaking up for these things, and it's okay to want to play baseball. It's not lame. It's not something I have to be as afraid of as I was before. So I feel like that's my role in this. I have a younger brother as well. He's 24. He also plays baseball. So I've got to lead by example. I can't just always come up with a good answer that sounds good on TV when I get asked a question on what do we need to do to make changes. So I'm joining up here to make sure that I take action and get educated myself. But for one, so many people, I feel like in Atlanta, they're on the move. Well, when you want to try to make a vote and try and cast your vote, you have to do it by mail. You have to sign up for the absentee ballot, then you have to get another ballot in return and have to send it back to you. Well, for me personally, they didn't send that back until it was too late. Right? We didn't get it in the mail to the address that's an Atlanta address at my parents' house. We didn't get that in the mail until it was too late. And then from other friends and family that are still in Georgia right now, I just hear about them being held in lines too long and trying to get off work. And we know how it is for anything, but let alone a Black family in the city or in the suburbs trying to take care of the family and trying to provide for them. You try to get off work, and then they're like, wait a minute, you start looking at the clock, it's like, oh, this is not going to happen to me, right? And so I saw, Mayor Keisha Rollins, reach out via social media to people and say, hey, I'm going to address these issues right now. I need y'all to stay in line to cast your votes. Keep hanging in there. So to me in Georgia, that's what that looks like.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because there have been all these images specifically from Georgia, because that's such a battleground, where you see people, especially when it came to the primaries, doing whatever it takes. And this is real-life voter suppression that you're talking about. It's been happening for decades. It's not fake. What you're saying, these examples of sending you your ballot too late after the fact, or shutting down the polls at 6 o'clock while people still are in line, that's a real-life issue. There needs to be some type of change, and I think that what we're doing right now is fair. But the idea of voter suppression, do you think that is well known, especially for folks within the generation, your generation?
I think it's known in our communities, right? I don't think it's spoken on enough. I don't think there's been enough light drawn to it. Bring it to light. Let people hear about it. Let people learn about what that looks like. And get more people to say, okay, look, if this is going to happen, we have to expect this, and we can no longer make the excuse. We can't say they didn't want us.
Jason, everybody knows, or it feels as if everyone knows that the time is now. America's paying attention to us. We have their eyes. We
The biggest athletes, the biggest icons, biggest entertainers are doing their part. But I'm also seeing people out there on the streets doing their part. When so many things got lost, could have very easily got in the commotion when it came to protests and we saw rioting, we saw looting. People still stood their ground. People still went out there and said, "Look, we're doing this for the right reasons. We're going to come together. We're going to use drones and social medias." I feel like this is the new way of getting things done the right way and just spreading the message.
You're right about that, and you're right. People are spreading the word unapologetically. We out here, we doubling down. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
But
Copyright por tercera vez. Según he visto eso, o sea, a lo mejor en el inicio habrá un copyright. Lo que sé, ni lo sé ni me importa.
Family member, if you will, former colleague, NBA great, sports analyst, philanthropist. He does it all, and he's here to give us his time and his platform to talk about something that is so important, that is voting. Everybody, welcome Jalen Groves to We the People. Talk to me about how important it is for the people who know you and love you and look up to you. Why is it so important when you use your platform to talk about voting?
Initially, we have to get past the stigma of the mental systemic racism that comes with the presidential race, governors, mayors, senators, judges. We've been conditioned to believe that our vote does not matter. So usually when we looked up at all of those races and people that were running, not only did they not look like us, we didn't believe they were there to represent our best interests. So therefore, as a collective, we didn't mobilize until Barack Obama, and we felt a sense of hope that finally our country is going to do something that we felt would never happen in our lifetime. And I remember being at the inauguration in 2008. I made sure I was there. And we voted in 2016. We didn't vote, Karen. We didn't vote. And so many people try to make this political. This is not political. Me telling somebody to vote is like telling somebody to pay taxes. So that's one, getting over the stigma of nobody is going to represent our best interests. And then number two, the reality is that the person that gets the most votes doesn't necessarily win the presidency. That's uncomfortable right there, because that's actually what took place in 2016. The Electoral College chose the president. And if you put all of their pictures up, I'm pretty sure they look a lot more like each other than they look like you and I. How about that? And then the third thing, especially in urban environments, oh man, they create barriers for us, Carrie. It's like you gotta jump over the fence, you gotta run past the dog, you gotta jump on the hood of the car. The lines is 5 hours long. You get up to the poll and they don't work. Elderly people working in the city, or they got the young people who understand technology working in the suburbs. Like, these are all systematic things that try to discourage us from voting. And then finally, we don't have a day off to vote. We need to work. So we don't get a day off. It's gonna be a full day, and I gotta work to pay my bills. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna mail in vote. And you know what you want people to realize, that counts too. So your vote will be counted if you're able to mail it in. So those are a few things that I hope that we can do in mobilizing. Shout to LeBron and his team. Shout to you and everybody involved. We will make a difference.
Well, let's talk about more than a vote. There is a Black collective of athletes and artists coming together and saying voter suppression is a real deal, especially in the Black community. When you just talked about, I gotta work, so I can't go vote. And then when we do get in the booth, just in case we don't have to work, do we know who we're voting for? Not only do we have to vote, we gotta be educated. And it's not always even about the man who's in office or the woman who's in office for president. It's about your local elections. It's about the people who are your DAs, your state DAs, like the people who actually make change in your community, who will change police brutality, who will make sure that your community is taken care of, who will defund police and hope that they can help you in stopping police brutality. So talk to me about why you decided to be a part of More Than a Vote and what it actually means.
Well, it means a lot to be involved with such an impressive collective, as you mentioned. And I said this multiple times, the root of the issue before we find the solution. And the quote was, I wish America loved black people as much as it loves black culture. And this collective, by the way, represents in a lot of ways what's encouraging, but also sometimes disappointing about our role as black people in America. Because we were brought here as labor and to entertain. And we use those vehicles to get paid and move to the suburbs and be idols of white kids. And so now that we have this collector, I would say sports and entertainment represent the most powerful group of black men in the United States. I'm talking about money, power, celebrity, the ability to mobilize, community involvement, their leadership, their intellect. And so to have all of us pulling in the same direction at the same time for anything that we're passionate about.
Buf, algo le pasa a al pobre negro rojo. Sí, está un poco bugueadito. Jajaja, XD. Jajaja.
Jalen, what does voter suppression look like to you?
A perfect example took place recently, Carrie, in Kentucky. It was 6 p.m. at night, and so many people were standing in line enthusiastic to vote. And you know what they did? Locked the doors. And you know what the people did? They continued to bang on the doors, continued to bang on the windows. They continued to let it be known they were not going to leave the premises until they got a chance to vote. And you know what ended up happening? They opened those doors and allowed those people to vote. So do not be discouraged. These barriers show you that it matters. And we're here to help you break through them. The same thing with our platforms and voices, Carrie, because you know what's going to happen. At some point, Breonna Taylor is not going to be trending anymore. People are not going to be protesting anymore. But it's still up to us to keep making sure that our voices get heard, and this is one way to do so.
Right, and that is a form of being activated, being an activist. It doesn't have to be protesting. It doesn't have to look like what you think traditionally activism looks like. It's voting. It's that simple.
We now have to understand, like, this is a critical mass moment for this movement to continue to hold up as much steam for as long as possible. And that's what this collection is going to hopefully allow for that situation to happen.
Jalen, in today's age of technology, it should be easier to vote.
No doubt. It's like, we call these devices smartphones, but yet I can't vote for them. All of the things that we do in our lives are in our phone. All of these barriers are things that people will need to overcome in order to create a level of enthusiasm to vote. And again, this is not political. It's your right to do so. And there's so many times where you feel like somebody may have gotten done unjustly in your community. Pay attention to who the judges are, who's running for Senate, mayor, governor. Pay attention who's running for president. And let's make sure in 2020 we make a difference.
Why is more than a vote so important and invaluable in our community right now?
Well, because right now, I think we have an opportunity to let our voices be heard louder than ever. Anytime you see the mobilization of white kids holding Black Lives Matter signs, that means there's a breakthrough. Now, what happens with that breakthrough is the next step. You're going to look down in your email, Carrie, you're going to see all of these companies telling you how they're going to work on their diversity, how they're looking themselves in the mirror, they need to make change. Just like in sports, right? You look on the field, on the court, all those black players. The further you get up, it's like altitude or a ladder. It gets thinner and thinner. And so a lot of people talk about the system being broken. I hate to remind people that it's not broken, it was built this way. And one of our ways to help change the system is is to vote. So that's why more than a vote is so very important. So we can make sure everybody participates and gives themselves an opportunity to let their voice be heard.
I think it's interesting because you talked about black men being very powerful in the U.S. if they're athletes and entertainers, because for so long those have been the only avenues traditionally to create wealth. The NBA season comes back. What are your feelings on the season coming back in the midst of everything that is happening?
I think you'll see players are challenging the establishment more. You're going to see them saying, okay, if you have all of these marketing and promotional deals, how many of them are with minorities? How many people are you employing in NBA? What about certain teams? Who do you have as a minority owner? Or what about the candidates that you have for positions of power? NBA players have proven as black that they are now movers and shakers in the game. They're now the dog, not the tail. So if they decide not to play, some of the biggest social changes and conversations have taken place in sports that weren't during the game. Colin Kaepernick was before the game. The Ali Summit was a press conference. So they could mobilize if they chose to. But if you do play, challenge the league. Black Lives Matter on the jersey. Continue to make sure that every time people are watching the game, they're also seeing the movement happen.
Jalen, I appreciate you because you are always entertaining and informative at once. I really, truly am looking forward to the NBA season. Thank you for working with more than a vote because your voice, your platform, all of it is needed, my friend. Be safe, okay?
Yes, ma'am. I love and appreciate you one call away always.
Thank you. Love you, brother.
Love you too.
Every conversation that we had today, I hope is helpful for you. I am so grateful to everyone who came on with me to talk about what's going on in our culture and how we need to change. Huge shout out to Jalen Rose, Bun B, Jason Hayward, Yvonne Orgy, and Russ. Their words were inspiring, but also important and invaluable. I hope your phone is full with all the information that we've been able to place in front of you. Again, you need to check out these resources because they are so important because we want you to vote. That is your voice. It is important. We, the people, want you to vote. So, go to morethanavote.org, fairfight.com, and when we all vote.org. Again, thank you so much for joining us and paying attention because this message, again, is invaluable. I'm Carrie Champion for We the People.
¡Bravo! ¡Bravo, coño! Epic Games, sí. Bueno, antes de terminar el vídeo, voy a enseñaros pues lo que voy a hacer. Sí, sería un poco triste enseñaros, ¿no? ¿Qué más da? Ya es bastante triste robar 1700 pavos. Y mirad, no se les ha dicho nada. A nadie se le ha dicho nada. Vale. A ver esto. Ah, es verdad. Mirad esto que es nuevo. No se oye un carajo. Bien. Voy a darle a comprar en 3, 2. O sea, me quejaba de que David me robó 1700 pavos. Y voy yo y me gasto 700. Por cierto, próximamente jugaremos a Sifón en escuadrones. Bueno. Ya está, ¿no? He estado tanto tiempo fuera y tan ocupado que he perdido la noción del tiempo y Y todo aquí ha sido nuevo y no he podido acostumbrarme. A ver si mañana me reincorporo y me acostumbro a estas cosas, ¿eh? Bueno, ya está. Tenéis a la izquierda un vídeo de FORTNITE y a la derecha mi canal. Y yo me despido. Y esto de los desafíos rápidos no se me olvida. Lo haré próximamente pero sin grabar. Y eso es todo. Adiós.